So I pulled in.
We don't have sound from the room yet. It's not you.
Should I park? The window goes down some. I'll just roll it back up.
Well, and your dash light was on, so
Thank you.
I thought it was kind of strange, so.
You go see if I can get.
No sound yet, Tara?
Nope, worries.
Yeah, you can't hear Bob.
I
And
hear the room. Hi, everybody.
Bob, there's Bob. Tara, you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. I think, is Paul coming tonight?
He told me tonight that he's most likely not gonna be able to make it tonight, so.
Okay, all right, so we get going.
Yeah, looks like we're all set.
Hey, 6 o'clock, can we start or
Yeah.
wait for Amelia?
Um,
Wait till she gets back from
yeah, if you wanna wait a minute.
her car issue.
Yep. Yeah, there's a ton of information on there.
So it was pretty interesting.
Well, I'm pretty sure right there, you just done more reading than I did, so.
Those maps are awesome.
You. Okay, at least it's not raining, Amelia. Okay, time is 6:04. Get the master plan committee meeting Wednesday, January 5th. Those present are on Zoom. We have Tara Bamford, our consultant, and Bob Regan in East Alton, way over in East Alton.
Way over.
And Jill Hauser, Kelly Sullivan, Amy Terabecchia, myself, Russ Wilder, Jessica, and Kate. So calling the meeting to order. The agenda, anybody have want to change anything on the agenda that we have tonight?
Nope.
Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I move.
Second.
Second.
Yep, Bob moved and Kelly seconded. Okay, so the first items, and I'm going to, I believe Tara, you'll be leading us in this for the discussion on questions that were proposed to be asked at the workshops and through topics that came up in the survey and through discussions.
Could, but I think you easily could too, while I listen carefully and ask any clarifying questions that I need to give me guidance as I do the plan.
Okay,
My suggestion was kind of you do it like a speed dating approach and give each topic area about 10 minutes and then don't expect to have consensus, but move on to the next one.
okay.
Hey, just for the record, Russ and I went through the entire list the other day over the phone, and we ended up having quite a lot to talk about.
I'm so surprised.
But you know what, Bob, I think these are the tough questions that are gonna be central to the plan that you're gonna be working on from now till August.
Right.
And my thought in doing this was we can at least see kind of how much consensus there is among the committee members at this point, and try to start figuring out next steps.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, did you get a copy, Tara, of the things, my notes that Bob and I put together?
Yeah, so it's pretty buried in another project, so I didn't even have time to print it out though.
Yeah. So Bob and I could start if you want. Is that the way you want to do it? Or do you want to?
No, we're gonna lead it and she's just gonna listen to us.
Just gotta listen.
banter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
But
So,
in the 10 minutes, Russ, you gotta make sure everybody at the table gets to chime in, so.
so the small town character, we talked, Bob and I talked about all the traffic running through the center of town on Route 11 as both a plus and a minus. A plus for businesses, I guess, and it's a minus because everybody's just roaring through town on a major highway. But then I added some other thoughts today. That to me, the small town feel is, if you drive around town, you'll see lots of field areas and old farmhouses and things like that. It's really quite attractive. And plus, we have a lot of forest land, but we do have nodes of that historically have been developed. West Alton used to have a post office, and there was a store over there at the junction of Route 11A and 11. East Alton used to have an active store, as you know. So that was something that had developed at the time, and it was something that serviced that little area. It was a community-based thing. And I began to think, well, where other places are. We don't think of Alton Shores very often, but there's a lot of people that live over there.
Quite a few.
And, that has its own little community, basically.
So.
And it could, you could talk about zoning over there where you could encourage a store, for example. And then quite pleasantly, the old Bauman's store, what we used to call the Half Moon store at Crescent Lake.
Where Bake Brood is right
Bake
now.
and Brewed is now there.
Yeah.
And that historically has always been a little community thing for that little area. So I had ideas like that. I don't know if that's complete or not, but and I think that the small town character is really like little villages or little nodes where people, it's everybody knows everybody. They congregate there, and you could promote that type of development. I don't think that would be seen as a bad thing necessarily. I think people would like it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And then but how has it been changing over the last few years? We've had a number of multiple lot subdivisions that have been built, but they didn't get built. The roads are there. There's a number of them. Or if they did get built, they came so slowly. They came on so slowly that the road, it was all done like 12 years ago. And now what are we just trying to accept it now or something?
Right.
So that type of development hasn't had a good track record in town. And I don't think it's something that really lends to the small town feel. I think if we were to try to revitalize the village, this main village here, by doing things that would make it more vibrant, and also the historic little nodes that I just talked about, I think you could get a really nice feel for the town. So that's my 2 cents.
One of the other items that we talked about having to do with the small town feel was some way of mitigating the effect of all the traffic that flies through it. And maybe there's, I don't know, a couple of traffic lights we install, or some way to get people to slow down and stop and notice where they are. And maybe encourage some people that are going from here to there to find an alternate route. I'm not sure if that would fly, but the amount of traffic that just zooms right through town, that's an issue.
So I kind of agree with what you had said, Russ, about trying to revitalize the downtown area, keep that small town feel downtown. And then the little nodes around, to me, is more characteristic of like a small town feel, I guess. Plus minus with the traffic running through town. I think in a small town, that's generally where you get your traffic, is through that downtown corridor. And I think, I don't know what we would be able to do about it, quite frankly.
Well, it's
So those are my
also
thoughts right
a
now.
common problem.
Mhm.
If you think about any town in the state that's on a state highway, I'm thinking of,
Up and down 28, the entire length of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
28,
Mass all the way to
Yep,
wherever it
yep,
is.
yep.
Tilton, if,
Yep.
Route 3 goes right through Franklin and Tilton. It's all the time. So.
What I love about New Hampshire that I really take into consideration whenever I drive anywhere is that you are on a major route, but it's generally a beautiful route. It's not like you're on the highway the whole time. You are on a state road, but it has more of that back road feel to it,
Yeah.
which I appreciate. But then, it's hard because society as a whole just wants to get from A to B.
Well, but I think that driving around New Hampshire does have that, you have that surrounding open space and then a little more concentrated business, housing, residential, but the nodes we're talking about. So I think.
Could everybody please position their microphone in front of their face so we can hear you?
Sorry, Bob.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you, I was just reinforcing that New Hampshire feel of the open space and then coming to a slightly more populated area where you may have some small
Oh,
businesses.
and you have to slow down or something because, one of the things that we're talking about in the redoing, upgrading the section of road on Route 11 from Minge Cove to Alacoya State Park is potentially putting in traffic circles on either end. This is the state talking about this, like at Cherry Valley Road. So that when you're coming off of 55-mile-an-hour road, how do you slow down and know that you're in a different thing instead of just roaring right through? So, that was brought up as a discussion. And I think if you see over near where Lakeshore Park is, there's some bad accident that happened there a couple of years ago. But there was a, talk of just, you got a bunch of roads coming around, have it go through a circle and then go out. So that whole middle section, that 4 miles would be like a 40-mile-an-hour, which is supposed to be today, 40 miles an hour. But things like that, you can do traffic calming by doing that type of thing. So.
Russ, I want to just jump back to those kind of underdeveloped housing areas you were talking about. I'm relatively new to the area, but I noticed around the dump, it looks like there's an area that's been partially subdivided and is now for sale. And there's another one kind of right across from that intersection. And again, so if that node is targeted for some kind of development, if there's some kind of smaller residential units, or I noticed there's something called workforce housing, some way to kind of create some affordable residential units in areas that already have road accesses. Again, I don't know if the conservation subdivision alternative was ever passed or what the options are, but since there's already parcels of lands designated for housing, maybe a mixed range or something.
Right, that's a good idea.
And I think that's like one of the things that's really specific to New Hampshire communities too. And like, even when I think about like downtown Alton, like what there is for a downtown, it's this mixture of, rental units and residential housing that's homeowner owned and some business stuff. And it's like just this kind of like blend, and it's this little hub that comes together. And we used to have that in other parts of town, like you said, but that's really more concentrated in the village now and at the bay.
Right.
So how do we protect that, preserve that, and encourage that in like East Alton and West Alton?
Right.
Yeah, we're talking about moving the fire stations now.
Right.
They'd love to give the West Alton Fire Station back to the people who built it. My uncle helped to build that.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, and then East Alton, right? There's another fire station that's sort of underserved. So I think that's something we can work off of. I was on the planning board in Windham, New Hampshire, and we did that. We call it almost like I don't know if we call it a performance zoning district, but we really wanted to have these nodes developed, like the depot was one of them. And then West Wyndham was another one. And they were sort of natural things that were there already. All you needed to do was to, organize it a little bit and encourage it, and it would work. So anyway, I think a lot of people.
49 seconds.
Well, then I have a follow-up question.
But one of the things we didn't talk about, which they did, which was in the survey responses, was people and how they feel about each other, and who do you know? Do you know everybody in the small town? That's the small town feel. Town's going to grow, and I think that small town feel may get more concentrated in neighborhoods than the whole town like it used to be. There'll be some of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like having those hubs to like even just running into someone at a convenience store or
Right.
whatever, at a business in that area,
Mm.
in that neighborhood. It's a good way to get to know your neighbors. But I'm not living out in West Alton, not necessarily going to know all the folks living out in East Alton,
Or down at Crescent Lake, that's
Right.
like another whole world. It's
Yes.
like, it's like Kansas or something.
Yeah.
I think one thing that we might want to see if it's appropriate to include in the plan would be a listing or a chart that shows the neighborhood organizations that exist in town. And that would be very useful for people coming here who don't necessarily know anybody, and
Right.
get them integrated better into the community.
I
And
think that
again,
wasn't that in the previous plan?
I'm not sure. I know we had discussed it along the way, but I just want to make sure it doesn't get lost. And
Oh,
I
that's
think
very good,
I
very
think
good.
this is one of the things that will really enrich the small town look and feel.
So if I could go back to one other thing and drill in a little bit in the what makes development in the rural areas feel like it fits. You mentioned some subdivisions that are just paper subdivisions or took a long time to develop. Can you say more about what made those feel like they fit in the rural area versus not, what could have been done differently?
I know some of them, the developers decided to drop the ball and go away. And I don't know, do we have any control over that at all? Jessica, you want to say anything about that?
But what my question, it sounded more like there's also a design element in there.
Yeah, well, they were 2-acre lots, there was the typical 2-acre zoning that we did back in the 70s. We started doing that. And, on-site sewage disposal, street with the cul-de-sac at the end. And they just didn't fly, really. I mean, there's some of them that did go, they didn't get fully built out.
I think it really does come down mostly to the contractor and what they choose to do and how much they choose to put into it.
But if there was a demand for it, wouldn't they have sold?
Well, sometimes when you just have the road in, they haven't developed the lots, they just put the road in.
Right.
Because they get money, they clear it, and then they just try to,
Well, they put the utilities in, the drainage and all that stuff.
yeah, maybe,
So-
yeah, I guess,
All the upfront stuff that they have to do.
yeah,
But then the lots have to sell.
yeah.
So what would have, if you were designing it, what would have made them feel like they were more part of your rural areas and be more attractive to people?
I think they were built with the vision that what our zoning ordinance would allow to be built, the 2-acre lots and all that, and all the subdivision regulations and everything. And so developer says, I'm going to build it, but he didn't do the due diligence in the business model to say if they'll actually sell or not.
Right.
And there was, if they had been wanted, they would have sold. There was nothing really wrong with them.
I think some of them ran out of money. It's the truth.
But if they ran out of money, Bob, it was because what if they had people lined up wanting to buy lots?
Then they wouldn't have run out of money.
So
is there a different kind of lot or a different kind of development that we think, I know that's hard for us to predict, but like that we think might suit the needs of our community better? Like as we're thinking about going forward.
Well, there's things that do sell in town are places that are already built that have huge acreage with them. People will come in and buy them so that they can live out in the middle of nowhere. They do that. Those sell.
Yeah.
They actually do sell. But these typical subdivisions didn't. Okay. And I'm saying, well, what about the future? We
Right.
keep talking about mixed use, having, stores and people live together
Mhm.
in the same place. I think there's a potential for that Scott has been doing over here where the old drive-in theater was, behind the school.
That suits the needs of both seniors who maybe want to have walkable access to things or shorter driving distance, especially long New England winters, and young families too.
Yeah,
That's-
so
know that,
what's
Mikey.
been sold recently, I don't know if you've driven around over towards Guilford, there's a bunch of houses that are being built along the road. They're fairly modest places. They're nice, but they're modest and they're selling just like that.
Well, and I'm
So
seeing a lot of that on like Old Wolfboro Road, there's just the small gray and white, almost modular, a little
Well-
bit cookie cutter, not super rural looking.
Well,
But
what's happened is, and I think also to the point of the road going in and probably more of the contractor not doing his due diligence, even if he, like, for instance, said Larry Road up on
Right.
Alton Mountain has only so many houses on it, and then none of those are for sale.
Right.
There's a road in and he sold those couple of lots, and so that,
But the rest of the lots got bought up by one person
Mm.
and they combined them all and they put one house on it.
so,
Oh, go ahead.
so another model might be taking some of those subdivisions, and if you could, and it may require an exception, but, having some 2-acre lots and some 1-acre lots and some smaller units, I don't know, a
Starter
tiny house,
homes.
but
There's no starter homes.
2-bedroom affordable, if you could build something for under 200,000
Oh my
that
gosh.
a couple or a
well,
family
I
could
think,
get
and
in.
I think that's gonna be hard though, coming through what we just came through, because even now it's slowed down somewhat, but anything that goes on the market is gone.
So,
$10
so
for a 2x4. $10 for a 2x4.
Oh,
I mean, building
no,
things are way up there.
So I don't wanna let you go too far down the housing rabbit hole.
Oh,
I think it'd be probably good to segue, because you talked about it a little bit, to the second topic
okay.
and focus on businesses.
yeah, the businesses. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we'll get to housing some in number 3, but we could be talking about housing all night and not solve the
really,
problem.
really could.
So the right sizing of businesses, the comment that Bob and I had was, we talked about potential for, could you have an industrial park someplace? And could you have it? I just drove through the one that's on the Guilford Laconia line where FW Webb is, and there's a dental office in there, and there's a
Yeah.
LASIK, the eye place, and could you do something like that in town? Is that a right-sized business? And everybody says, well, that's fine, but we don't want to see it. Well, that's what those parks do. They're off, they're hidden in the woods and they work fine. The nice thing about those is they provide local employment
Yes.
and pretty good local employment as well.
The Alton Business Association had a guest speaker a couple months ago at one of our events, and she represents the Lakes Region Chamber of Commerce, I
Yep,
think. And
yep.
she mentioned that the #1 employer in the Lakes region is actually manufacturing.
Yep.
Which
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, if you go over near the state school, over where the county farm is out in there, they're all manufacturing
Yeah.
out in there,
But you don't, because they're hidden,
right?
because
Yeah.
they're tucked away and.
And around the
that's what you don't
airport.
necessarily think of it.
Live, work, play.
Yeah, around the airport in Guilford.
Mhm.
In the back.
Something that-
One of the proactive things I think we can do in this area that we're not doing currently is more participation in regional associations. The Lakes Region Chamber of Commerce being one, and that would be something that the Alton Business Association could get, become a part of in some way or another. And I think there are some other regional business groups, if you will, that if we were over the longer term, get somewhat more integrated with them, maybe some stuff would flow our way, appropriate business opportunities. I think Alton is not currently identified as being either a target or welcoming necessarily to businesses. And people basically, when they're looking for a place to site a business, they don't look at Alton.
Right.
And I think we need to do something to change that.
Well, one of the ways those parks got done was the town built them. You know, they actually built the road and they put in the utilities and they put in the water, and I don't know if this might be sewer in there. But anyway, it's all ready to go. So it's sort of like you need to be able to talk to businesses. Would you locate here if we did this?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so you just can't say we want a business park and wait for a developer to come and
Right.
do it.
Well,
That's not
and
gonna do it.
because, and that's exactly true, because Alton isn't high on the list. We need to entice business owners and people to come and put some roots down in our town. And I would think that the consensus is generally that Alton is maybe not the most welcoming. It's also very spry on areas for business. There's the village center, but the downtown corridor, everybody knows there's issues there. There's not a lot of storefront. Parking is an issue. The water is an issue, so on and so forth. So a lot of people are aware of that, so they're not thinking about it. Generally, for whatever reason, year-round businesses in town struggle here as opposed to other areas.
I think retail's a bit of a tough one for Alton, but I think there are some other opportunities that we ought to try and cultivate.
Absolutely.
Agree about retail.
So it- but-
Well, I think,
Yeah, I know.
I think it depends. I think people want to see small business in town. It really just depends on the business, I think.
If you had more like the small manufacturings that we've seen over in Guilford, for example, okay? You wanted to go that way. What's the other thing they need? They need a skilled workforce to be able to work there. And that skilled workforce needs a place to live.
Mhm.
And where are they all gonna come from, you know? So.
Yeah, I think all these issues are really tied together.
Yeah.
They really are.
related.
And I think too, like, as we talk about, like, I know we're not talking about housing, but just like housing with businesses, I think it's good to have like diversity
mix.
of different types of industry
Absolutely.
in town, because like when I lived in Massachusetts, we had a town that I lived in where there was one major industry and then it went out of business. Like there was one like predominant employer for the town, and
Right.
when they shuttered their doors, most of the town was unemployed. So I like thinking about how to create that longevity and create a diverse workforce, and with that comes diverse housing options too, so.
Well,
So,
looking back in history, Alton used to be the capital of corkscrews.
That's right.
Right, but you need the right sizing of the business. I can point to things that that people wouldn't want to have,
Yeah,
which would be big box retail,
Yep.
yeah.
would be pretty much not wanted. We have to drive a ways to get it. I mean, I live on the west side of town, so I can get over to Guilford, and that's not that bad. Where Bob lives, he's either got to go up to Ossipee or to Rochester,
Hmm.
you know, so.
One thing I'll say about Alton that I think is a really major resource are the thousands of cars that go around that circle every day, winter or summer. And I think if there's any way we can like build up Homestead Place, I mean, the small businesses that could offer food and travel services, whether they're toys or sports equipments, or really just a quick, bite of eat that's not McDonald's. I like options.
Yep.
Something a little healthier now that McDonald's doesn't even do a salad, but it's just a quick grab and go. If Alton supports some public restrooms there or some open seating or something that would be a benefit to the businesses that could locate there. But I just think it's kind of nuts to have all that traffic and not make it really easy for them to come, spend some money and go on their way.
I think a big
Can
thing.
I jump in? I
Yes,
feel like you guys started talking about the kinds of businesses without talking about the questions I have in there that would help you frame that. You know, I'm hearing retail and food. Well, that's fine if your goals are to support the tourist industry and not year-round jobs, because those aren't livable wage jobs. The industrial park, that's it. You know, I really would caution you to look into that and meet with some other towns that have done it. Usually you'd form an entity, some industrial authority kind of thing that would
Right.
buy the land. You've got to get wastewater to it. Wastewater, water, three-phase power. Northern New Hampshire is full of empty industrial parks that part of the investment was made and they sat empty and they're overgrown. It's a model that worked well in some places and not in others. And I'm not an economic development expert, so I don't have the answers to what makes them work or not, but that's something to be really careful about. But I think it'd be helpful if you could talk a few minutes about the community goals that you're looking at with business development. Is it tax-based jobs? What are the goals? And then that will help you think about what kinds of businesses.
well, the goals are for the stay, work, play, which is what Kelly held up. And getting it so that we're just not a lot of rich retirees and that's it.
That means wages, like having a certain expectation, like, so when you talk about big box retailers not wanting those in, the reason why I don't want those in is because the jobs that they create, I think are like low quality jobs.
Right.
They don't provide enough pay or benefits to their
Right.
employees.
Exactly.
And then that creates that issue again, when we go back to housing, is people wouldn't be afford to live
Right.
here with.
Like
with
Walmart
that.
is notorious for their full-time employees, or you can just get under and then they're not having to give you your health insurance or things like that. A lot of big box employers do that just so they can wiggle around the tax bracket. We don't want those around here. We want good, long-standing paying jobs, stay, work, play. So we are a more diverse community, not a retirement community.
Right. But the tax base for this town is the lake.
Yes,
And every town around the lake that's where they get their money from.
Sure.
And that's not going to change.
sure.
But what we're missing is the children, is the young people. It's not a good place to stay. I mean, you can grow up here, have a good time skiing and so forth, but you're going to leave because you won't get a good job around here.
Right.
So I think, Tara, the answer that you're looking for is it's something that benefits the community and the employment in the community and provides good quality jobs. Now, one of the possibilities for that is medical, and we've already started to see that.
Yep.
That and, you can do a professional business park. Now, that's all going crazy because we've learned that we can use these things and you can live anywhere. You don't have to have the brick and mortar sitting here, So you can be an architect and live here. And
Right.
you don't have to have a architectural building
Right.
where you go every day.
Well, one of the things in that regard that Josh and I talked about this morning was to entice people to move here to do that kind of stuff from their local shop or their home. Over the next 10 years, changes in technology, especially internet connectivity and availability, that's going to be a big one. And I think the town will have a role in both helping that along and making known that we have good resources in that regard. And I think that's something that we can exploit. And that certainly will support the small townness
Right.
and at the same time make it possible for more people to work, live, and play.
I totally agree. And the key to that is good internet service. And
Yeah, and that was a good part of the discussion that Josh and I had.
Yeah, so the 5G stuff is being rolled out. You can get it, 5G a little bit here and there around the area. But Alton is somewhat in a good shape in that because we have two providers. We have a competition on the street for providers.
Well,
The service may not be all that great, but it's getting there, so.
there was a small tidbit of knowledge that I picked up that I didn't have before. The towers that Verizon has on top of Prospect Mountain, yeah, they're serviced by Atlantic Broadband.
Oh,
So
okay.
when Atlantic Broadband goes down, cell service in a good part of the town of Alton goes away, as does internet.
But I think from a point of view from what
Anyway.
we could put in the master plan is that we would seek to strengthen
More
our,
competition.
our services that we get.
Absolutely.
And I think by doing that, people will want to live around here
Correct.
and all your local businesses will thrive because there's more people here using the local businesses.
Right.
So how about the next group of questions in number 2? That's a little bit, I put in there because I keep hearing, well, people allow everything in the rural area. Well, so I wanted to get a little bit of a sense of what you feel makes a business a good fit for Alton Bay or the village or the rural areas. And then I think later we'll talk about this idea of the neighborhood businesses in the hamlets that you were talking about initially.
Yeah.
So I'd like to speak to some of the impacts that that I've noticed with applications that have come in lately, and comments from abutters, and how they've expressed concerns with things like noise. I know the stormwater runoff was a big priority for them and a concern, and also buffering. People want it, there was one development that, seemed to be a good fit in town, but there was a lot of pushback from abutters, and it would have provided, another gas station in between the circle and like the Guilford line. It was an area to provide, spaces to have, possibly some more medical facilities, a daycare provider, things in town that opportunities to have businesses in town that don't exist currently.
I don't know that we need any more storage units.
Oh, but they're coming.
I know.
Boy, they do seem to be popping up like mushrooms.
But you're right. But I think that particular development, they only came in and presented once, right?
They haven't even gotten to the planning board.
Yeah, they
Well, they
we
came in
did
for conceptual
there
and then
was a
they had to get,
conceptual and that was
they
it.
had to go in front of the ZBA, and
Yeah,
there was a ton of pushback,
really.
tons,
Okay.
to the point to where they haven't come back
From
from the abutters.
just, okay.
Yeah. It's like people want the business in town, but like not near me.
Not near me, yeah.
So
yeah.
you have to,
Yeah.
find that fine line of,
Yeah.
where
Well,
does it take place?
I also think small things that aren't so small, for instance, at the village center, every single tree was taken down. It probably would have been nice to have a tree line between the school and that whole retail area. It just seems so super industrial.
Well, they do have a planting plan. When it's finally done, they're supposed to have a whole bunch of landscaping in there.
Yeah.
Okay,
So that,
Something there
So
now,
when's
you're
it
right.
finally done? Okay, and it's been a few years and it's just stuck, it's barren. It was, and I understand like things take time. I'm not like, and stuff happens, like I get that. But when they first went in, they took down every tree right up to the line that they could. I understand as a developer, you do that, but I know that there, like, a lot of times in these large parcels, all of a sudden you can see everybody's backyard, like
Yeah.
right up to their house. People don't appreciate that. Maybe if they had left some type of buffer, it would be a little less feeling of intrusiveness, knowing that it would be
Yeah.
there. I mean, just a thought. I mean,
Generally speaking, yeah, I've seen like even residential lots just going clear cut. I'm sure it's the cheapest way for everyone and the owner gets a
Yes.
little bit of cash.
and
but-
you get every single piece of your land.
But some thought to the rural character
Yes.
being.
If you
stone
left a little
preserve,
buffer
stone
around it.
walls, hedge, call it a hedgerow, call it a
Yes.
wildlife corridor, call it
Yes.
something.
Yes,
But have that, like, here's my boundary,
yes,
here's my buffer,
Right.
literally. and
Well,
keep it.
to the point though, when on the planning board, I'm on the planning board, when we do those things, there's a planting plan, they show it where all the trees are going to
Right.
be, and that's when the whole thing is finished. But between the time they start and the time it gets to be quote finished, this is what you got.
So if you can flip that though and say, we want to maintain some of the native growth here
Right.
for wildlife purposes.
those
or
large
conservation.
trees that are there blocking, that are there, that are beautiful, that have been there,
It's actually worse too for the environment. Like if you go in and you cut down 5 trees and you're like, oh, but I'm gonna plant 10 in their place. Like that's not good because you have 10 trees that are all the same age fighting for the same nutrients.
Yeah,
So like you need
Yeah,
some
no, it's-
older growth stuff too, and that will help
So
maintain.
call it
structure.
mixed or maintain some existing. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
or at least try to make that more of a benefit,
Right.
know. for the
I mean,
development.
I'm on the business association, the board. I am a small business. I feel strongly about small business in town. But when I drive towards Guilford and I look up to the left and I can see everybody's house that I couldn't see
Hmm.
before, I would be mad if
Right.
I lived there. I'm not gonna lie. And it's not just the fact that, and then
Mhm.
that's undeveloped now. So they just went in, they cleared it, and now everybody sees their back door.
well, that's maybe why they had a tough time at the ZBA. So.
Well, but this is what I'm saying. So maybe had they left a little bit of the old tree buffer to help,
The sound with.
They probably shouldn't have touched it until they had the plans approved, is really what would have been a better approach.
probably,
Right,
I'm just
which-
saying,
which has
maybe it
been-
would help the
yeah.
abutter situation is all I'm saying.
Right.
If you just left some type of buffer, just like when we talk about building businesses and having, keeping it out of sight from the road, well, you just went into somebody's backyard and, they had this nice forest backyard and now they have nothing.
Yeah, and I
No.
think that like that would help with a lot of the issues that are in this questions, like when we're talking about stormwater runoff,
Exactly.
we're talking about noise,
Yep.
like all visual impacts. That buffer will help solve for a lot of those issues.
Yeah. Right.
Or that old growth buffer.
Well, I don't think there's really, other than holding people to the way they're supposed to be doing it in the regulations.
Right.
I think that would have been solved because you're not supposed to go and clear a lot.
Right.
Before you develop it.
Right.
You're supposed to get your approvals and then you figure out how to do it.
Right.
But that's not.
Well, and
Something
again,
that
so.
we're working on in the
Right, so I,
office to try to get the
well,
word
right,
out
well, and I
better.
get it, right, but again, if it's brought up, then, that's,
Right.
like, I also get like sometimes stuff happens, like,
But the good fit, I think, I'd like to get, you got to get by the NIMBY problem when you're a developer, but I'm looking at a higher level. What's a good fit for the neighborhood? What would they want to have there? And what do they need to have
Okay, can I rephrase that a little bit? I think Tara put her finger on it a little bit ago. And I think what we need to state in the plans is our goals for businesses in Alton. And the goals, certainly there's some retail that we want to see and other retail that we don't want to see. There are some work opportunities that we want to encourage so that people can live, work, and play. I like that phrase, and it should appear in the plan somewhere. And the statement of what the objectives are is going to be made pretty clear. And I think if we can accomplish that, we'll and put that stake in the ground. Hopefully it gets to fly. I don't know if it will, but there's things we can control and things we can't. But we can at least try to articulate it.
I think what we're going to try to identify is what do people want for businesses and what will they get out of them? What do they get out of it? is it something that I'm going to use, a daycare center?
Yeah, my ears perked up when I heard daycare, because if you want families.
Yeah.
You need.
And there is
you need
like next
something
to
for that
no
0 to 5.
daycare in town. It is near impossible. It is one of the, I mean, it has got to be the hardest thing for parents forever, is just trying to find daycare.
They're
Something
mapping New
close.
Hampshire right now for childcare deserts, and they're everywhere. It's
Yes.
really, really tough right now.
Yeah. So I think like in terms of the master plan, I don't think we can, I mean, I think we could define like right now what we think the town needs and what we think specific communities within the town would get the most benefit out of, but that's obviously going to change.
Sure.
We want this document to
To move and
with
grow.
that,
Yep,
right.
yep.
So I think like when we talk about those goals, like talk about, the business development in relation to maintaining that small town character. But also like having, kind of an evaluation process where we're asking these questions for every potential thing. So like, is it a good fit for the specific community? Does it meet a community need? And almost like a
Yep, yep,
Q&A.
there it is. Yep, yep.
Yeah, those cluster flies.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I just wrote something like that for another community the other day in their master plan, and instead of, they didn't want to deal with any specific zoning changes in their plan, so that's how I wrote it, is that proposed zoning changes or zoning changes under consideration, here are the filters for that, here are the lenses to look at each of those. So that's one thing that we could do. Probably time to move on to the third topic. I've got a full page. What I'm doing is suggesting that when my paper is full of one that I have notes on one that.
I
to
saw,
get
I
me
see
started.
what you wrote, yeah.
So meeting the needs of Alton's growing senior population. If more senior housing were to be developed in Alton, what types would be a good fit for the community? Would they be apartments, cottage style, accessory apartments, guest cottage style, accessory dwellings? So what we have now is like
I like duplexes, I think.
yeah,
any little apartment.
Yeah, they're really-
They're so little. They're so little.
So I mean, if you look at what's being built new in the area, there's one, they're just advertising for, I think Taylor's gonna do it in Wolfboro. Those are pretty nice, but
yeah. That's that.
Yeah, that's not typically affordable by a lot of people.
yeah.
One of the things that Russ and I did talk about was as a part of Belknap County, we are very dependent upon the county in terms of the rest home, or I don't know what the right term for it is, but there's a chance that that's going to go away on us over the next 6 months or so. And alternatives to that, both in terms of making it easier for people to stay in their home, and maybe there's some opportunity to have some private facilities appear in the town of Alton and not be as dependent as we currently are on the county stuff, because that's, to be frank, is under attack. And there's talk of privatizing that. And if that happens, affordability is out the window. But I think this is an area that we got to pay some attention to. Again, in terms of need, there's definitely a need there. My 75th birthday is coming up in a couple of weeks, and I'm looking. I never paid much attention to that before, but somehow I have to now. There are not many opportunities locally for seniors and in-home healthcare or people that can take care of you. There's a company that works out of Wolfboro, but then that's almost 15 miles from Wolfboro to the center of Alton. So, that's one of the things that I think we need to put some emphasis upon.
So right now, we currently have, where our senior stuff is near the Pearson Center. And there's a bunch of, there's 2 streets that kind of go in there that have that's what we've gotten today. And I think there was the Gilman home across the street.
There was,
It was,
Yeah.
you know,
right now, it's just those,
just the.
just the
yeah.
ones up, yeah.
And then Ryan Heath, our erstwhile police chief, who is now the town administrator, came in with a proposal for apartment buildings. Right, if you were to go in past where the senior housing is and then continue, and just to your left in the woods there's a big flat area. That's where Wilbert Way comes up the other way. And that would be, he's proposing to have apartments in there. I think, how many buildings? 4?
Yeah, now he's actually changed that proposal. He's
Okay.
only gonna build one.
Yeah,
But anyway, the idea is that that whole zone across there, it goes all the way over to Bay Hill Road. There's almost like a shelf up in there that has
Mhm.
quite a bit of flat area, and it's already started. It's close to downtown, you know, it's not that far away. So that's something that we could encourage there. But I think we'd have to work with the private sector or encourage the town to work with the private sector to get a proper thing planned and
right.
developed.
And I think that would be probably key because so what is Ryan looking to build? Like last I knew, he wanted 4 6-unit buildings, which means there's an upstairs and a downstairs and
Elevators or something.
yeah, and I mean, unless he's putting in full-fledged senior housing, I'm hard pressed to think he's putting in an elevator because they're expensive.
Well,
Most contractors that come in and build are looking to get in and get out. You know, least
Well, a
amount
lot
of
of
money.
people around here would go to Havenwood or go to Concord. You know, go to the Heritage Heights and that down there.
Mhm.
And that looks like a small community. It's got streets and
Yeah.
buildings that are all one floor. Big flat area. It's on the floodplain of the Merrimack River. So
Yeah.
also the old.
Well, these areas that should be senior, like for instance, Eagles Rest is a 55+ community, but it's, you know, I think it depends on the statutes that developer, right? So there's kids that are, it's not a senior housing
So
area.
it's more like an affordable housing area.
It is more like an affordable housing area.
Yeah.
I know Ryan was looking to put in workforce housing down on 140 a few years back, you know, and now he's looking over here. So I think, so the first question, so what type of building? I think for me, single level, with a courtyard.
But again, I think if the density has to be such
Mhm.
that you're probably gonna have to sewer it.
Right.
And so that's just,
I think that topic is further down the list.
So I'm not even touching on the sewer.
right. But I'm just saying, all of these things where you talk about increasing density in this
Yep.
area anyway, it's likely that you have to have something. It might be a localized system.
Right, but in my mind, seniors need to be more in the downtown area because they need to be
Right.
quick access.
One pharmacy, you want.
Right,
food, you want
hospital you
medical.
want, yes, so you need to be in this area.
And that, I mean, this discussion kind of brings you back to what we were talking about with housing a little bit earlier too, when we were talking about like starter homes or like affordable, like smaller
yeah,
2-bedroom
Put
homes.
affordable on the second floor then, you know?
Yeah, but like, you know, I think the thing that would also benefit people in the market for starter homes would benefit people who are looking to downsize and, you know,
Yeah.
who maybe aren't at the point where they need senior housing, but they still want something smaller, more manageable and, you know.
Right, and that's one of the discussions we've been having with our alternative housing committee is sort of those open space or whatever conservation type
Right.
subdivisions. So, you know, that's been the big topic of, you know, depending upon how big how big your houses you're building, would depend on the density and,
Right.
you know, conserving the backland.
Right,
or,
and I mean, but if
know,
you,
cabin colonies, things like that. So those have been discussions at that committee. So it's definitely something that
doesn't
we're
the
aware of
senior-
and have been talking about.
Have to always be just seniors. Can you have families mixed in with it?
I would say yes. I mean, you want them, seniors need certain things and closeness to services is kind of one of those things, but they also can benefit from level paths, even if they're like through the woodlands or whatever, as can moms with strollers and
Yes.
kids learning how to ride bikes and, so I certainly think you can have, a small.
And that's a
family.
health benefit
And I
too.
was gonna say, exactly what I was gonna say. I think like seniors, like Todd, like everything is always separate. Seniors would benefit from that interaction with younger, with kids, with
Mhm.
like when you have reading time up at the school, your grandparent go in and read. Those are wonderful opportunities to interact, and that keeps your connectivity and your
Right.
community thriving and together.
Yep.
And that is very health beneficial to seniors. So I do think,
Especially during like COVID, I went like when everything was locked down, I would take my kids for a walk every day with our elderly neighbor and I would check in on her. And like, that was like, that is a benefit, like, or should be a benefit for seniors living.
and that benefits the senior, it benefits
Kids,
you,
kids,
it benefits
yeah,
your
everyone,
kids,
yeah.
like that's just a
Plus they
win
have a
all
place to
around.
go trick or treating too.
Yep.
Yeah. And,
Yep.
and there's like that, again, we're preserving that small town feel, that small town character of neighbors helping neighbors, like,
Right.
when we're talking about what senior needs are, I don't want to just think about like segregating seniors
Right.
to like.
Well,
one
and it's,
corner.
well, and
maybe
it's
what
funny
we're-
because I was gonna say, I feel a lot of times, especially in town, because we want to keep our tax bracket low, we defer to seniors because they can't afford it, which is fine. But then it's also like we do keep them separate, but we really shouldn't,
Right.
like, because that's just wrong.
So maybe what we're talking about is a scale of housing. And that scale of housing actually services different age groups,
Yeah,
cohorts, and
Yeah.
that's fine.
yeah.
So maybe that's something that we might be able to
Even
recommend.
if we were like a startup, even if we were the first, to do something, which clearly I'm sure somewhere has done it, but in our area, we don't have to always do what the town next door did. We can try to, branch out. I think in a mixed area like that would be wonderful. And I think it
Well,
would be,
You guys have kind of described what's called in planning, age-friendly community design. That's exactly right, that what works for a small family works for an older person too. So, would definitely, build that into the plan and some of those considerations. If you get smaller units, that's, single young people are looking for those too, not just people who are downsizing. So-
and also the two most sought after and most difficult things to find in town, in this particular town, starter homes, small family areas to move to, and senior housing.
Mhm.
That's
One of the
challenge for a lot of
the
communities.
specific things I think we can start looking at is if you look at the model that the existing senior housing was built upon, that was primarily done with grants. My father-in-law was instrumental in getting that done. And there was a great deal of grant money involved in building that.
Yeah.
I think if we were to look at the possibility of not replicating that per se, but as has been suggested, a mixed use housing, low cost, and get some town resources involved with looking for funding for it. I think that's something that ought to be included in the plan. And I think there's an opportunity there.
I agree.
So it's probably a good chance to move on to number 4, because we've been 7:00.
Okay.
A couple other things on the agenda.
So I clearly, like, number 4 for me is almost like a hot topic, because I feel that our downtown corridor is a tragedy. It's a waste. It's shameful. We're Alton, we're the gateway to the Lakes region. Everybody wants to come and visit here.
Wait, drive through all the abandoned buildings.
Yeah,
that-
and everybody, and basically just drives through Alton and kind of keeps on going. And I feel that if we could have a more vibrant downtown corridor, that would help the town you know,
Yeah.
insurmountably. So I do personally feel like the town should do some type of study. We should do something. We have, I mean,
Well, as Tara points out, the last time the study was done, a lot of the technology that's available today wasn't thought
Right.
of at the time. And I think that you can do a good wastewater system that is locally run, locally controlled, and limited in scope. In other words, you don't want to run a sewer where you don't want something to happen. You want to run a sewer where you want it to happen.
right.
I'll tell you, I used to work for EPA. We were EPA was installing a new sewer in Wells, Maine, right in front of the Rachel Carson Wildlife Refuge. And so they were digging along the street, taking all the backfill that they took out of the sewer line and filling in the marsh at Rachel Carson Wildlife Refuge. And those were being sold off as lots to build houses. And EPA was making this happen. That didn't go over well.
I wouldn't think so.
But it's a good example is that as soon as you put something there, all kinds of unintended consequences happen. So I think I think of the study, I don't think you ought to say we need a sewer. I think you ought to study, what it would take to build such a thing. How would it be administered?
Obviously, yes.
And what would be the impact of doing so?
Mhm.
What would be the expected impact? I think that's a fair investment of resources. to
I
find
do,
that.
because it has been an extended amount of time. The technology, as you stated, was not available then. I mean, things have changed so drastically that we should maybe take another look at it at the very least. So that way, when we question, we understand why we can or cannot move forward in that capacity, in those ways, or something like that.
It can be done, and it can be done economically, actually. So
Can I just throw in, if you're gonna look at a sewer system in central downtown, look at your multi-use thing, can you do underground utilities, IT, electricity and stuff, bring back some trees, because it could really change the landscape
Yeah,
if you're
and
Yeah,
if
very
you got the
valid. Yep.
streets dug up, you can do a lot
Yep.
of things anyway.
Yep.
take advantage if you're got the holes
And
done.
I think the biggest thing, and probably a challenge, would be seeing that investment would be worthwhile.
Right.
Making that investment could be so beneficial to the town. That would be our challenge.
One of the other things that I think it's appropriate to have pointed out in the plan is that because of the density of the bay and the village, we're on a pretty good land base for the local distribution of effluent. However, in my experience, having spent 10 years at Mass Water, you got to look at that periodically, because if you ignore it long enough, the thing's going to blow up on you. And I think we're sitting on, I won't say necessarily it's a powder keg, but it could be.
Well, that was my point about this whole village sits on a sand plain, which is a sole source aquifer. And it's deep. It's like 100 feet deep. And the transmissivity is way up there. We got our wells in it, and we're disposing of sewage in it. And so eventually some of the more persistent stuff like PFOAs and the forever chemicals will make it there because it's everywhere. So Bob is absolutely right. It's something that you probably need to do something about anyway.
And I don't know if this is,
There will be a lot of pushback on that, because to do it correctly, we're talking not a couple of $1,000s worth of consulting. I mean, this would be a large project to have the impact and the alternatives studied and reported upon. It would have a significant, it would add maybe a buck or so to the tax rate to have it done right.
Well, it would
No,
have to be
I
part of
think
the-
my guess is if you guys had applied for the last batch of COVID money, you could have used it for that. I think there's a ton of money out there for these things right now, so.
I
this is
think
the
our
time.
biggest, our COVID money just gets spent.
Yeah.
I wonder if like putting in language in the master plan about, regardless of what any sort of research were to uncover about this topic, that like it's something we reevaluate because of how we sit in the aquifer, because of the fact that New Hampshire has, well, a lot of areas have issues with PFAS, and we have a high cancer rate in the state because of granite and other things seeping in the water supply. Like, just to put that language in there, that it should be something that should be reevaluated.
So it can be a health thing.
Yeah.
And it can be
Water
the lake
quality.
quality,
Yeah.
those two things.
Yep,
And, you know, our biggest
our
economic
biggest commodity.
engine is the lake.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And we don't want to jeopardize that. We don't want
Right.
to jeopardize the health of our community, and we
Right.
don't want to jeopardize the
If
health
you-
of our economy either.
So if you just focus on that as the reason and the necessity
Yeah.
for having to look at this, I think that would be good in the master plan.
Yeah, that makes
And
a lot
some
of sense.
business growth would be a byproduct,
Yes,
a
yeah,
second order effect. But I think the primary goal or the focus needs to be on the public health and the environment.
yep.
Water. Yep.
The other side of that coin, though, is if you know, there's certain statutes that would let you do a bond and then let the businesses pay for that with their increased value. So you don't want to lose sight of the business growth byproduct as maybe how it gets funded. So that this answers, I have my answer on this one. So
Okay.
how about number 5?
Well, you guys are the recreation people.
Okay, so,
And Kelly, I actually wanted to talk to you at, maybe not at this meeting, but
okay,
maybe afterwards to get some information from you. about
sure.
The prior recreation.
So I would just say that the Recreation Center for Alton Youth, when I was on the Recreational Facility Committee, it was not directed at just the youth. It was a multi-age facility. So yes, we wanted fields and we wanted maybe an area where kids could go, but we wanted an area where seniors could go as well. Walking paths, just a community area, not just a youth area. So it was never just a youth area. So I just want to put that out there on record. So I would, number 5, recreation center, I would just say all ages. I would just I would just take youth right out of there. Is there a unified vision for a recreation center? No, there's not, because the town shut it down right quick. I was on the Recreational Facility Committee, and when town elections rolled around that year in March, the selectman that felt that maybe we should just study, just to even look into the possibility. Do you think that it would be beneficial to the town? Let's put this study together. He was blackballed. He's no longer here. And then it was promptly shut down. So no, we do not have a unified vision for a recreational facility.
Now, one of the things talk about use of the high school and the school facilities for some of these things. I know a lot of towns base their all age recreational facility and combine it with the facilities they already have.
Mm-hmm. Again, so I would also state that I was on the Recreational Facility Committee because in 2018, I co-chaired the community profile, which was basically everything we've done with Tara that I volunteered 2 years for. And this is all not new information to me. Obviously, at this point, we're going more in depth to it, but all of the information that we got back from our study and our survey is basically what we received back from our community profile. And everything we had done to that point was the same, except for the mailings, because we were just a volunteer group, so we did not have funding for that mailing. So through the community profile, we had top 3 item takeaways. Well, the first one was rather funny in an ironic way, a lot of people stated that their sense of community in Alton, they didn't feel a sense of community in Alton. People are hard pressed to come out to events or interact with each other. I find that society in whole is kind of like that. It's very much me first society in general over the last few years. Alton particularly, I think, is struck by that epidemic. And so that is not anything that that All In for Alton came from that community profile. And that's not anything that we could tangibly do anything about, because I volunteer on a number of committees, and a lot of us do, and we're here, hey, come on out, but that's not up to us to make you twist your arm. But we did have walking trails and bike paths to connect the town from one end of the town to the other was a big takeaway. A recreational facility and one main area to get your information, like a community portal, or something like that. Because people are hard pressed to go to the town website. Everybody right now just goes and asks Facebook. So it was like some community area that they could access all of the information from the school to the town events. So those were the top 3 takeaways. So through that community profile, we created the grassroots group, All In for Alton. So we were just trying to work on those items. We started out with probably 18 people, which is a pretty good number in town here. And we had just started like some beautification projects, and whether that was even putting lights up at the library that winter or whatever. We did the loop trail with John Downing down at Jones Field. So we cleared that trail.
I would like to interrupt for a second and pay a little homage to Jonathan Downing, who recently passed away.
Absolutely.
He was, very instrumental in helping that trail project to go. And he's one of the town resources that will clearly be missed. Not everybody agreed with Jonathan, but he put an awful lot of effort into it.
He did, and a big thing for Jonathan was the trail system. So we had done the loop trail, and so we had. So because I was on that profile and on the All In for Alton committee, I was asked to join the recreational facility committee. So that's how I ended up there. It's not because I wanted a recreational facility. It's not because I felt we needed a recreational facility. It was not my personal feeling at all. That was just from taking away what the community had said at the profile. So I was extremely disappointed when that was just shut down as fast as it was, because certain people feel it's not needed. So I'm sorry that I had to soapbox for a minute there, but I do feel like sometimes I get labeled because I'm that person, but I'm just that person trying to speak up for people that said, hey, this is what we feel we should do. And I'm just like we are here, just doing a survey and just doing a study of what we feel would be beneficial to the town. That was my role on the recreational facility committee as well, just to see if that would be feasible. But we did not have the time to actually see if that would be feasible. We did have a lot of questions for here at the third line. Is there a private-public partnership that could work, a town-operated parcel? All things that we talked about and discussed as a committee, but we never, got to go any further.
One of the things that Russ and I talked about in this area was, at least, and I don't have the exact data to back it up, but other than some empirical information of my own observations, it does appear to me that the ACS fields and the high school, and they have a lot of athletic outdoor stuff there. And I do believe there's a good parcel of land adjacent to the high school that the town probably controls one way or the other. It looks to me like these are resources that are currently underutilized that could be promoted as part of our plan and potentially expanded upon in the future. And I think that would be a bit more attractive to some of the town fathers than coming from scratch and trying to develop a recreation resource from the beginning. I think if we build on what we got, we have a possibility of getting more accomplished.
Bob, what's, for this outsider, what's ACS?
Alton Central School.
Okay,
When you took your tour of Alton, you probably noticed there was a big field behind the elementary school. And that's what I was talking about. At the high school, there are a lot of athletic facilities that are not visible from the road, and they're not even visible from the school.
So
There's a
I
lot
would
of stuff
also,
tucked away.
I would like to state though that the facility isn't just about sports,
No,
and it's not just about a soccer field. It was more about more like a community center.
That's what I was.
So right now we have the Pearson Road Community Center and we have the Bay Community Center. I don't know what we call that specifically, but
Mount Major Community
the
Center.
Mount Major Community Center. They are all, well, not the Pearson Road is relatively new. The one in the Bay is clearly older.
as a model, I would want to look at what they did in
Wolfboro.
what's the town? What's the town on the west end of the lake? Help me.
In Meredith, I mean?
Meredith.
Yeah.
Meredith has a community center that you would die for.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I would also, I don't have the information. We could probably gain that information. But we met with the people that built that community center. We did our due diligence for our committee. Like I said, it was just shut down. So we were not able to present that to anybody because nobody cared.
But I think looking at it as an add-on to existing facilities is likely to get a bit more support than trying to build it from the beginning.
And while I would agree with that wholeheartedly, I'm not pushing for a new facility. I'm just stating what I know.
I would say that I agree that it would probably be easier and more efficient use of space to see if that we could add on to what exists at Alton Central School and Prospect Mountain High School. But there's also some other current concerns with that I would have in terms of like maintenance and upkeep and things like that, based on just the staffing that the schools have already. And in addition to that too, those facilities were not designed necessarily to house the community. Like for instance, the track that's at the high school is not lit very well at night or in the early morning. And like there's some like they would also require upgrades and changes and modifications and additional staffing for maintenance and stuff. So it's not like that would be a zero.
And again,
dollar
I would like to state that if it were a community area, so I feel that if you were at, say, a school, you would be harder pressed to get somebody in there from a public sector. Like we thought if you had an area, maybe a physical therapist office would rent a space, or some outside entity would come in and rent some small area of that building to help offset costs. Because again, we were tasked to see if a recreational facility was wanted, needed in the town. It was not about money per se at that time. We weren't saying the town's going to pay for it. We weren't saying we're going to do it all by grant. We weren't saying it was all going to be, I mean, we tossed about a bunch of different things. What if it could be private, public? What if it could be, again, not able to follow through because we were shut down as fast as we were. But when you do think about having the possibility of maybe, somebody coming in and renting a space from that to help offset costs. There's a world of possibilities if you just think about it. Also, going off of what Bob's saying about, using what we already have, I do know that the CIP committee is looking at a lot of big changes with buildings in town and upgrades and things like that. So obviously we would take that into consideration. If you can utilize what you already have,
Yeah.
obviously that's almost a no-brainer.
Yeah, they talked about within 5 years trying to move the fire station.
Right.
So the fire station building already has some recreational facilities near
Right.
it and so forth.
Yep.
Just the other thing is Wolfboro did the Nick.
Yep.
And that was donations.
Yep.
That was all, they set up a program and
Yep.
people donated to it.
Yep. I would also just like to note though, at some point we have to consider, like, there's a lot of stuff that's done by donations around here.
Yeah, right.
So you can, I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
So-
but so in New Hampshire, that's the way we do things too.
Yep,
That's always been the way.
Yep.
So I'm involved with one town that does lease out part of their school building to a nonprofit community group where they have senior meals, they have a food shelf, they have all kinds of activities in it. So and then that pays their lease, pays for the heat and upkeep of that part of the building. So it's one option as we have declining school enrollments.
I hate to bring up Wolfboro all the time, but there's one other thing that they do at their high school, which is the Governor Wentworth. It's got about half a dozen communities that are part of that school district. And they have a very rich after hours, I don't know what you want to call it, continuing education / hobbies, workshops and those kinds of things where they allow the public to utilize the facilities. And I think that's a pay-as-you-go kind of a deal where town funds are not utilized outside of supporting the infrastructure. And I don't think we have any of that currently in Alton. And that would be another one of the recreational things that we could look at expanding. I think there's an opportunity there that is currently not tapped.
So for number 6, I was mainly thinking about the beach, but I just want to throw in a reminder that everything that we're doing and that you had in your goals and vision chapter is not brand new, but is the survey that we did is building on past work, like the Allen for Alton work and the previous master plan. We're building on those and adding, not pretending they never existed and starting with a blank slate. So just want to be clear on that.
Just reading through this again, and there's a lot of continuity.
a lot. Yeah.
A lot, yeah. So on the recreational need for a beach, the town has always bemoaned that they never got Camp Alton. They should have gotten, instead of Bob Bear building a mansion on it, it should have been a town recreational facility. We do have the Alton Bay Beach. We have a boat launch at the bandstand, next to Shibley's, right? We got the Echo Point access. If you go down Echo Point Road where the road gets close to the water, there's a place where you can put your kayak in, you can park across the street. Then there's the Riley Road access,
I laugh because you can fit maybe 3 cars. in the
3
car.
cars
Yeah.
in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you take your life in your hands.
And you
back
wanna
into
be-
the road.
And you want to be a mountain goat.
Yes, yeah, and in the summer months, a lot of times the parking spot is taken up by scuba diving.
Right. We also have a similar one on the far southern end of town on Crescent Lake at the Barnstead town line. There's a kayak access. And then we have Blueberry Lane, which you know about.
Yeah, I'd like to know more about that.
Blueberry Lane gives you access to Hills Pond,
Yes, I know that.
right? And
People aren't happy about that.
no,
I think you left off a significant one, Russ, if you're through your list. But the beach at the basin at Roberts Cove is a really nice
That's correct. I never think about that when you're, thanks,
It's
Bob.
shady, but it's nice.
Right.
So,
And that
so
was-
my question in there, so I know I could see the list of these on the town website and whatnot, and my sense from people's comments in the survey is that they would like somewhere that feels more comfortable to take families
Right.
as opposed to
you would
the
be-
main beach that's right by the busy, really busy road.
Yes,
am
you
I
would-
right?
Yes, you would be correct. People bemoan the beach at the bay. It's small, it's packed usually with tourists, and it's right by the marina and the boat launch. And it's really not an ideal place for a beach.
Right.
It happens to probably be one of the only places that we could put a beach. And we do have the ramp, and now we do have the state ramp with Downing's Landing, which are still far, far under what we need because we have so many people
Right.
that access the lake through the bay. So I don't know how we would be able to give them
Well,
a beach.
the one thing that could happen possibly is if another summer camp goes out of business.
Yeah.
Would the town be willing to try to capture that land?
I mean, that would be wonderful, because it, like, right now, the only way that I can enjoy the lake in the summer is that I live in an association that has an association beach. But if I go to any of the public beaches, other than maybe Roberts Cove, because I haven't checked that,
Right.
but they are overrun. There's no place to park. There's no, like,
Well, Albee Beach over in Lake Wentworth, they made private to the
Right.
yes,
town.
yeah, we
Yes.
used to
You
go
used-
to that. I
Used to be
Yes.
able
drive
to go over there.
Yes. And when people found that out, that's when you get more of the,
Mhm.
we have no beach access around here. Why can't we have something that's more for town
Right.
people?
Yep.
So we can go and not be overrun or whatever.
It's nice.
So are any of these other ones that you listed, even though they're small, are any of them like a beach that you could take your kids to?
Not really. They're,
No.
they're really just access points for the most part, or a place to put a kayak in.
Yeah.
Well, the Roberts Cove Beach is a families go there all the time, but it's not very big.
The parking is limited. I mean, you can only get a half a dozen cars in there or something.
Yeah.
And, yeah. And
Is
there's.
there any opportunity to make that bigger?
Not really. It's hemmed
No.
in by private property, so.
No,
Frontage on Lake Winnipesaukee is a premium. You just can't get it, a lot is $1 million, so.
Yeah, I could really see this being the issue that adds to the us versus them feelings though.
Yeah.
the other item that was not even discussed in here, is a lot of summer and nice weather activities being pursued. But the winter should not be ignored at all. And one of the items that Russ and I have a particular self-interest in preserving is gun stock. And our current state rep at the county level, which controls the funding for gun stock and wants to privatize it, he is also a person who signed a petition to secede from the United States. And he wants nothing to do with the government operating any kind of recreational facility, well, any kind of facility, but specifically no recreational one.
Correct.
So one of the things that I think needs to be put into the plan is specific statements of need for wintertime recreational capabilities accessible by town residents. Now, Gunstock is specifically in the town of Guilford, and it belongs to the Belknap County, and it's operated by a commission that was set up by a state law specifically to get politics out of the running of it. And unfortunately, politics is jumping right in. But I think Gunstock and the various cross-country and snowmobile trails that are available in and around Alton that's something that we want to highlight in the plan somewhere.
So Bob, is Gunstock operated by a public entity or contracted with a private entity to operate?
It is operated by public, it is a public facility. And a part of there are people that want it to be privatized or leased to a private concern. And it's not the kind of area, oh, you're from Vermont. It's not the kind of area that is a destination per se. It's for day trippers, mostly from greater Boston and local people. And it appears not to be very attractive to the outfit that operates Aspen and Mount Sunapee and so forth.
But so Mount Sunapee is a good example, though. That's also a local.
No,
And that's a public, I was on the Mount Sunapee Commission that,
but that's now run by a private concern.
but so when the Mount Sunapee Commission is public people overseeing the lease agreement with a private concern.
Right.
So the private entity is running it for the state. Is really how-
Vail Resorts is running it, right?
Yeah, yes.
So, and they run a chemo and they do Sunapee and they do Wildcat and Anatash and
But their activities overseen by a public board.
so in Belknap County, we have a Gunstock Area Commission, which was set up in 1959 by state law to run Gunstock. And they're have an agreement to provide certain amount of profits that they make to the county. The county doesn't have to get on the hook for debt that they may incur. But it's a political thing that Bob is referring to, but it's a very important facility for the region and it's important to Alton. A lot of residents use it. I don't know whether we get into that, talking about regional recreation facilities that we use and how important they are.
So
to the
I
town.
would say that I agree.
Yeah.
And then what Bob had said about just having a statement about wintertime recreational needs or something without being political.
Right.
Um,
Well, we do have, I mean, if, one of the big things that we have now is snowmobiling, if we do have snow,
Mhm.
it's there.
Mhm.
And the other thing is winter hiking. Winter
Yep.
hiking is a big deal. And so,
and I
Are
just,
you seeing fat bikes in the winter?
yes, in certain places, we allow them on our rail trail, in town. It's long, not motorized, as long as it's non-motorized.
where is that rail trail?
It's the Lakeshore Rail Trail runs behind my house. No, it goes from Mount Major Park, which is where Roger Street is, you know where
Mhm.
Roger Street is?
Mhm.
And it goes up to West Alton Marina, about 2.5
That's
miles.
okay. So that kind of brings me to kind of circle back to the recreational as a whole.
Yeah, because there's a lot of, the Forest Society has recreational land. Lakes Region Conservation Trust has recreational land. That has to be included as
Yep.
part of that discussion.
And so I tend to get heated about the recreational facility simply because of the way that was kiboshed, because to not even be open to listening to people doing research about something, to me, is cutting off your nose to spite your face. So I did not appreciate that. That being said, I don't feel that that would be the first place that we went to do something for recreational in the town. I feel that more people would love to see the connectivity and more of a rail trail through town to connect the bay to downtown and to other areas of town where you can walk with the stroller, you can bring your dog or on a leash or
Kinda
whatever.
started with the Quinnipi Trail, right?
And we did start it with Quinnipi Trail, which was something else that the All in for Alton group had a hand in. So all I'm saying is that, it doesn't have to be all big bang bucks, like right away. I really do feel that more people would love and utilize the connectivity of the trail system. If we could manage to do that, I think that would be great for the town. It also could help cut back on that traffic that drives through downtown, because maybe more people would walk instead of driving their car. So you could, kind of tie it all together.
What do you think about bike lanes?
Oh my gosh, I don't know how we would do it, but that would be amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
My only comment is because I walk my dog on some of the trails out by Mona, Albion, far away.
Mhm.
Some of the bikers are just like, they don't get that they're sharing it with my sister is mostly deaf and blind, and it's like terrifying.
Mm,
Oh,
Try
yeah.
to communicate with her that
right.
I'm hearing bikes, so there just needs to be some public education for bikers, maybe about.
Well, one of the things that we're talking about in this study for the 4 miles between West Alton and Elacoya is actually establishing a bike lane along that section.
It is
Highway road.
terrifying to drive
Yeah.
that road.
Yeah. Well, and I think especially for that area, because so many so many people bike up there.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So I do think that if it were possible,
Dedicated line.
that
What
you
we're
could,
talking about is 2 12-foot lanes and a bike lane.
yeah,
One of the things that Russ and I did talk about in that regard is having some kind of pedestrian / bicycle accessibility from the bay, at least as far as Mount Major.
Yeah, I mean, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Except DOT claims to be our friend, but any of those who were around when we had the what do you call them? The bumpy things on the breakdown lane,
rumble strips.
Double strips.
the debacle,
Yeah.
which was specifically done for bicycle riders. That they are very difficult to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think like to Kelly's point, like when we were talking about recreation, it doesn't even have to be a center. Like having trails, having bike lanes, having like for all seasons too, not just summertime activities, but wintertime activities. I mean, when Parks and Rec put the like floating dock thing at the bay on the other side of the Mount Washington
Yeah.
pier, like that, I see kids there every single day. Like it is so crowded, like just adding that. So even though that's not adding a beach,
Right.
that's like adding another resource for us to enjoy the water for residents. So like trying to be creative about the space that we have and think about how our residents can utilize the space in all seasons.
So
make it
you're
accessible
talking
for
about some things,
pedestrians.
recreational facilities that aren't brick and mortar
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah.
Again, yeah,
So
because
we
like,
need to talk about both.
well, and the thing is, because a facility is a crazy, wicked hot topic, clearly. Well, it doesn't have to be a facility. And if you can, again,
The road is a facility,
okay,
Yeah.
yep.
but
And I
like,
do
think-
feel, and also it would probably be easier and less expensive. There would be a cost, but to do some connectivity of the trail system, when people see that, like when people see that you are improving, that's a nice segue and they're more on board to do more.
Well, one of the things is, the WOW Trail with that ran into over there, there's some pushback on that at
Mm.
South Down Shores and things on Paugus Bay. So it's not going to be all smooth sailing to try to do that.
No,
But I think we should have it in the master plan.
yeah,
I
Yeah.
think you're on a good point to move on. I have a lot of good direction, and I think the volunteers working on the different pieces have a lot of good direction from this conversation too. We're not trying to write the whole plan tonight, just touch on a couple of questions.
Sounds
So I
good.
just wanted to share one thing. I'm gonna share an email that I received today. I guess the Lakes Region Planning Commission is doing a survey on pedestrian and bike paths in the Lakes region.
really.
Perfectly topical.
So, I actually just got that today. So I'm gonna share that email with the committee, and if you can all
Great, thanks.
maybe go on and, hop on and see what kinds of questions they're asking.
Cool.
A very good point that comes off of that. Our prior town administrator was very much against our involvement with the Lakes Region Commission. And rumor has it that our current town administrator has a different attitude toward it. I think one of the one of the things that, again, both for the recreational stuff and business development, we need to explore opportunities to engage with regional organizations. And that's something that the town of Alton has not been doing over the past period of time. And I think we should at least open up the discussion to look into it.
I think that's funny. You bring that up because I think that was also brought up for some of the road work that was recently done in town. And somebody brought up us not being part of the Lakes Region Planning Commission. So maybe definitely something to just look into.
Well, I think it should be at least a sub-paragraph in the master plan.
I'm happy to hear you say
I
that.
thought it was, yeah.
Having spent most of my career with the Regional Planning Commission, there's a definite benefit to regionalism. They get the funding for you for transportation planning. And
Correct.
if you're not part of it, you're not benefiting from that or their regional economic development activities.
Yeah, there may be some workforce funding, housing funding as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of the debate around that had to do with NIMBY, not in my backyard. And I think that attitude might be changing a little bit. I don't know for sure. But there's obviously some opportunity there that we shouldn't be turning our back on.
So Tara, was there anything else? I know we need to look at the dates. So I think we've discussed the questions enough.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I think you did.
So March, you got February 2nd, that's gone by. No, that's coming up.
Yeah, we're not in February.
Oh, we're not February yet?
I have something due January 13th, so don't do that to me.
It's Groundhog Day.
One of the items that I'd like to see on the February 2nd agenda, Josh and I met earlier today, and we laid down the basis for an outline for all of the, we'll call it IT and telecommunication infrastructure stuff. And our next get together is the week before that upcoming meeting. So one of the items we should be able to hand over to Tara is at least the outline that we've developed. And I think that'll be the starting point for a lot of that activity going forward.
Yeah, so I mean, I think something like that, I really want to encourage everybody to run things like that by me as soon as you have it. Run by me draft material outlines, your ideas for these things, because this schedule only allows me 2 weeks to take the draft you give me and turn it back out as my recommendation to you. So we really want it to be in pretty good shape when I get it.
Okay.
We'll go as quick as we can.
But yeah, when you have that outline, just send me an email.
So we should
Okay.
all be diligently working on our homework.
Well, there's that, yeah, and this schedule is to kind of say, you know, I don't retire for a few years, but this is the schedule you guys said you wanted for this project. So if you want a draft plan to give the planning board in August, these are the dates that we need to make. And if we don't make one, we can have 2 meetings in a following month, right? We can compress things, but what you can't do is hand me all the drafts at the same time and expect me 2 weeks later to have the final. So they need to be spread out a little bit, at least for my benefit.
Okay.
And Russ, you and I already had some back and forth about natural resources. And after the last meeting, seeing a couple of people panic, I swapped land use and infrastructure to put infrastructure off a month. Does this look better? Does this, people feel pretty comfortable with this?
It works for me. Like I say, once we get the natural resources inventory, that mine should go pretty quickly, so.
Yeah, and I'm gonna give your your working draft to look this weekend, so.
Okay.
Partly did this so that I have the dates that I need to do things, but it should, everybody should put their dates on their calendar and when you feel you need to have what done to make these dates.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I don't see any public input.
So is everybody going, so let's take, for example, infrastructure. March. First draft by the middle of March.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
doable.
Yeah.
That's
that
doable.
looks, my piece looks doable in that time frame.
And okay. And land use would be the middle of third.
That one's in my pile, and I'll be going back and forth with Tom on some things on that.
So one of the things that I did in my piece, I took the pieces of the vision and goals and just sort of stuck them up front in my section so that I could refer them, say, I've got to make sure that I have stuff that supports any decisions we want to make about that particular vision or goal. And then at the back end, you've got to be able to have the action plan. So I drafted up, I kind of say, okay, I'm going to jump to what the action plan is. So I made a little table that says, as I'm drafting all this stuff, gee, that's probably something that we should do. For example, a water quality study and, would probably need to be recommended. So sort of what I did, I just bookended my section with the goals and vision up front, the things I had to address, and then I did the action plan. Now I'm filling in the middle.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know.
That's a good strategy.
Yeah, it is.
And it's all fluid because, you don't,
Yep.
you can't make the data fit what you want to have it come out as. but-
Right, right.
But you can do a little bit of approximations as you do it.
I appreciate that. Okay.
All right.
I think that's a great approach, and because when I've spent the last 2 days unwriting a chapter I got from someone in another town because it's just got all this extra information in it that we don't need, and it's gonna bog down the reader. So, my message to everybody is always, what are the issues? Those are the things you want to back up with your background information, right? If something isn't an issue, we don't need a page of history and data about it.
And so
Right.
what I gave Tara is way too much stuff right now. And it should probably about 2/3 of it should go away. So.
I'll tell you that this weekend. I'm not shy about that.
When Josh and I met and we went through all this stuff, we came up with a new acronym for a number of things relative to the IT requirements of the town. And the acronym we came up with was COW, which stands for Can of Worms.
Rabbit hole.
There's a lot of those. Huh?
Anything else that we want to talk about tonight?
I just have a small can of worms. I'm just, when it comes to worker housing or whatever this is a lot of the housing stock in Alton that I'm aware of is old. It's, they were camps, they were, seasonal houses. They're literally rotting. They're being attacked by animals and insects. People are still living in them. And I'm just wondering if there's any thought at all to how that's remedied or when these properties come up for sale, are there minimum requirements for houses on the market? I mean, I've seen some of these like turnover and you literally can see through the walls and people are living them. So I'm just wondering, is there a baseline for quality housing?
No,
Okay,
I would say.
Live free or die.
Yeah, that's
Alright.
basically, and that's what they're gonna say.
all right.
Yeah, it really would just be in the inspection for a mortgage.
Right.
Yeah,
And public health, I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
if it's a public health issue, but otherwise it's, most of those things are caught in a mortgage inspection.
right. There's a lot of mold.
Do we need to have some kind of a discussion with John about the various health regulations for the town? It falls under his bailiwick, right? Jessica?
Yeah, I don't, what would we have a discussion for?
Well, there ought to be something said about the public health requirements as it pertains to the master plan. I think it builds off of what was just being said about the quality of the buildings and houses and so forth.
Well, I mean, I think going with live free or die, I mean, if you buy a moldy house,
The die part.
Yeah.
slow, it'd be slow.
Are you suggesting it's live free and die?
I have heard it.
And or.
There are federal grants, CDBG grants for upgrading housing. I
Yeah,
think,
maybe it's just a matter of letting folks know there are resources or something.
well, no, not for the private individual, it'd be for the town. So, I mean, that's the only piece that I could think might relate to. master
Okay, it's just something that,
You questioned.
well,
Yeah,
yeah, I have a concern,
Mm.
that's all.
But again, it would usually be your regional planning commission who would help you with that. So-
Yeah, no, I understand that, but I think, I mean, I've
Yeah.
seen these houses turn over and clearly, you don't, an inspection is not required.
That raises a question, and I don't know, Tara, if you can answer this, but like, would town ordinances like fall under, like, would there have any connection to the master plan? Like, I'm thinking about like the fireworks debate that happens in town. When people say that they want to have a quiet rural community, but then people also want to be able to set off like 10 pounds of tannerite and
Right.
like,
Or
what-
Well, you could, but it's a stretch. I mean, you can say whatever you want, but the focus of the plan is the physical future growth and development of the town. So I think that's a pretty good way to get your arms around that.
I mean, there's safety things. The fire department will go into a burning house and there's a hoarder in there. They can't get anybody out.
yeah,
You know, that happens. I don't know how you stop something like that.
Right.
yeah.
So anyway, anything else that we want to chat about tonight?
I don't think so.
If not, the agenda is done. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Tara.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Tara.
Bye, Bob.
Amy, I'll see you tomorrow night.
Yep, I'll see you, Bob.
And Kelly, will you be there?
I'm not sure, Bob.
Well, you're certainly more than welcome. If you don't have the Zoom link, you can get it from Kelly, from Amy or me.
I forgot it was Zoom, so no, I will not be there, Bob. Sorry.